One, two. מזמור דוד. אדוני רואה לו אחסון, בנוטש את ירביצני, אמן מנחת ינחל נפשי יושבב ינחני במגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא על מוות לא ירא רע כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומנשנתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפניי שולחן נגד צורריי, דשנת ושמת ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד יודפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to renew my spirit, guiding me on right path, for that is God's essence. Though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod, they comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portions all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We are gathered here today, to say goodbye to Luba Cates, Ahuva bat Shmuel Shoshana. She was predeceased by her husband Theodore and her parents Samuel and Rose. She is survived by her brother Zachariah K., her children Farley and Lois, married to Lois, Tara Cates, married to Alan Roth, and Margot Cates. Luba passed away on Thursday, October 19th. That equals, or is the equivalent of the 29th day of the month of Tishrei. And I believe it was just under the age of 90. Her birthday would have been the 29th of October. Am I right? Just a few weeks short. Life is very much a matter of history. A word that if we divide it, in this case is history, but in this particular case it's her story. The truth is that every one of us is a kind of an author. Daily, we compose another page in the book known as our life. Ordinarily, we are not even aware of this process. Life is something that most of the time happens to us while we're busy making, of course, other plans. Ordinarily, we are not even aware of which page we're on. But all that changes when someone close to us passes away. Suddenly, a window of awareness opens through which we can view our lives and the lives of our loved ones from a new perspective. Suddenly, we can actually see that every life has a beginning, a middle, and an end. We experience how life stories are hardly different from a book that we take off the shelf, hold in our hands, and read from start to finish. It's at moments like these that we can take the time to ask the really, truly important questions. Do we like the way our life stories are turning out? If not, how might we change the plot of our personal novel? And what might be required of us to make those changes, to make them come real? If the death of a loved one inspires us to ask these kinds of questions, then possibly, and only possibly, the pain may be worth it. Self-awareness is one of the most precious gifts that life or death can ever bestow upon us. Presenting and providing a eulogy at a time like this is considered by our rabbis, our elders, and our sages to be one of the most, if not the most, rewarded mitzvah that you can do. And the reason it's so highly thought of is because the person that you are eulogizing is not here to thank you. So today, we're actually very privileged that members of her family have agreed to share with us memories of her. So I would like to invite the family to come up here, introduce themselves, and then let us know who she was and what she was like.
Luba Farley. You have two academics and a part-time, so this could go on for hours. Let me start off by saying what impressed, I'm sure, all of us about Mom was her generosity of spirit, larger than life presence. I want to emphasize Mom's home, Mom and Dad's home, was open to everyone. They loved to entertain, and that meant a lot to Mom. Mom was also very devoted, I should say, to her husband, but also to her parents. She was a very devoted daughter, and that meant a lot to her. Some things I want to mention about Mom, and I'm going to be talking about a few things. She loved to volunteer. That was a big part of her life, especially when she was younger. Organizations such as Pioneer Women, National Council, involved with various fundraising efforts with the PTA, obviously, but in her later years with the Gwen Sector Center, and that meant a lot to her. That was something she took great pride in waking up every Wednesday morning and spending the day there. Even when she was very, very tired by the end of the day, it meant a lot. She loved her time at Gwen Sector and helping out. When she had to stop for health reasons, I know that was extremely difficult on her and something that she often discussed with me and my wife Lois. Her involvement with the community was active right from the start. When we lived in Wisconsin and in Appleton, Mom was instrumental in starting the first preschool daycare program in Edmonton, one of the first few in the Midwest, and that's something she took great pride in. Some things people may not know about Mom: she always had a real interest, along with my father, in art, and had a small part-time business going to various flea markets and fairs and selling various forms of art. Mom always looked after people. It was really important to her that people be looked after. If someone lost a spouse, she was adamant that that person be included, whether it was just with Mom and Dad or whether it was with their friends. And there was always an extra place at the table for people to feel welcome. Mom was in many ways a family historian, and often the community historian as well. And she knew the history of both sides of the family. If anyone had anything to hide, she knew about it. And that still holds true. She's passed on that responsibility to me, I suppose. Mom was a voracious reader, and one of the hardest things for her was when her eyesight waned. That was very difficult for her because she just loved reading. Some of her other passions, I should mention the Yiddish group. She was just so impressed with the dedication of members of the Yiddish group. And I think one of the high points for her was when the Winnipeg Yiddish group received recognition from UNESCO and was only one of eight organizations throughout the world that were dealing with ancient languages or languages that really do need a revival to continue on. She loved her Saturday night discussion group events. My dad always referred to those as a meeting of the lefties. She loved singing, wonderful piano player, loved entertaining us after dinner. She loved meeting new people. Uh, really have to emphasize that, especially during their travels. I made a lot of wonderful friends. And of course, I got to mention Salisbury House. That was her default place to go. Both her and my dad were especially very active, and this is something that was difficult for her when my dad left us 11 years ago. They were very active with theater, took in a lot of theater, very active with film. Loved the Winnipeg Film Society, one of the original members. Loved musical events, traveling, loved the restaurants, loved discovering new places. And her and dad always discovered new places. They knew every corner of Winnipeg. They knew every corner of the province. And unlike anyone else I know, others will talk in the next little while about Mom's keen sense of humor. But in terms of traveling, they went to a lot of exotic places. And the more exotic, the more they loved it. They loved places such as Tunisia and Morocco and Thailand, and went to all corners of the world. And that was really important for them. Mom loved most of all in the last while her time at the Portsmouth and her time at Simpkins Centre, even though that was brief relative to her years. It provided a lot of comfort for Mom. Staff adored Mom, and she was always quite the presence, and they always mentioned that. And when we started talking to some of them on Friday and even after midnight when we went to sit with her before they picked her body up to bring it to the Chesed Shalemus, a lot of staff came up and were very upset, a lot of them crying, and we ended up spending a lot of time comforting them. Her journey near the end was especially difficult the last few years. She had a lot of constant pain because of her hip and arthritis, and probably a lot of it in reaction to the medication she was on for breast cancer. She went through a lot of mini strokes the last few years, and this played havoc with her memory and made her mobility a lot more difficult. What I want to do now is thank all the staff who have helped her and made her transition and the end of her journey a lot more comfortable for her, and I must say a lot more comfortable for our family. And it's really a testament to the compassion, empathy, and caring of the staff. I want to give a big thank you right now to you, Sharna, and to you, Anita Murray, who she adored, who she felt very close to, and it made her feel blessed to be included in family dinners at various times during the Jewish holidays. I want to also thank you, Marilyn Regic. You're like the fourth Beatle or fifth Beatle. She once told me she considered you a fourth daughter, and you did a lot for her, and she was extremely appreciative to you and to your husband Alex. And I think I should leave it to others to add to it. But I want to thank everyone for being here today and honoring my mom's memory.
Hi, I'm Tara. I'm Luba's youngest daughter. Um, how do I paint a picture of my mom? She had so many colors, so many layers. She could be charming and bold, introspective and quiet, forthright and blunt, compassionate and caring, anxious and needy, selfless and calm. She was a bundle of contradictions, but at the heart of it, a survivor with spirit and tremendous sense of will. How will I remember my mom? I think by the things she gifted me with from an early age and throughout my life. A love of words, of music, of food, of theater and film, of traveling, of good conversation and intense debate, a love of laughter, but most importantly, a will to weather life's ups and downs with a tenacity and strength. If my dad was the internal optimist and idealist, my mom was his pragmatic counterpart. I'll remember snuggling up to her as a kid and watching reruns of MASH and All in the Family, nestled between her and my dad. I'll remember greeting her with kisses on the nose and holding her hand, just because it felt good to be connected and close. I'll remember that when she was sad or in one of her blue funks, as she coined them, that making her laugh was such a great feeling. I'll remember her willingness to be silly and laugh at her own foibles. When I was little, I thought my mom was as beautiful as Elizabeth Taylor and Ava Gardner combined. One day when I was about 11, I remember sneaking into her jewelry box and putting on a pair of her signature chunky earrings and statement necklaces and swiping a cigarette out of her purse. I stood in front of the trifold mirror in her bathroom and tried to French inhale because that's what my mom did. And to me, that was glamorous. To me, she always had a presence that seemed at once bigger than life and yet at the same time solid, grounded, and forever present. My mom was an extremely private person, yet she had the unique ability to enter a room and connect with strangers, making them feel immediately at home and valuable. She never talked down to anyone, and I grew up with the idea that a home was not just for family, but to be open and welcoming to all. I truly believe that deep down she thought a woman could do anything that a man could do, even though she came from a generation that often made her think that her possibilities were limited. When at age 17 my grandfather said that I should go into something more practical and forget this art nonsense, my mother told me that I should follow my heart. I think she thought it as brave. When my grandmother died in 1994, I sat down with my mother and confided that all my life I wish I had what she had: children, family, a home. That in pursuing a career I had missed those important things that bring balance to life. She said she wished at times that she wished at times what I had, to have ventured out into the world and taken more risks, that she had never done anything special. I, I don't think that my mother ever realized fully how priceless she was to us. She was so much more than a mother, a wife, a caregiver. She could weave a story and tell a joke like no one else. She had an amazing mind for detail, a curiosity about the larger world, and best of all, a slice of irreverence. She was devoted to the things in life that gave her purpose: Gwen Sector, the Yiddish Club, the Saturday night discussion group, and most importantly, my father. They weathered so much together, and I believe that over the years their love deepened profoundly. The thing, though, that I think impacted me the most is that as I got older, and when we got past the things that pull mothers and daughters apart in younger years, and we gained respect for each other's experiences and struggles, I could talk about almost anything to her, often forgetting that a generation divided us from each other's experiences, but that the progression of life and time made us unified. I'll miss speaking with her, sharing bits of my life with her, and hearing her stories, tell a joke, play cards, sing songs together. Our table was always where, yes, religion, politics, and sometimes even sex was discussed. I guess because of my mom and dad, I'll always consider myself in my heart and to my roots a North End Winnipeg Jewish socialist. These last few years of my mom's life were an immense struggle for her and proved time and again that old age isn't for the weak of will. I think losing my dad after 56 years of marriage and 58 years of being together changed her world forever and challenged her to face life for the first time as a single person. My dad would have been so proud of how she faced these struggles, often rising above and beyond even her own expectations. Both my parents taught me perseverance and dedication to others, deep love and respect, dignity and compassion. I want to end with 4 moments that come to mind in remembering my mother. The joy I felt when my mother was able to share in my wedding to Alan, her ability with a smile and stories in Yiddish to break through to my father-in-law, who was in the final stages of Alzheimer's, and make him smile for the first time in so long. The tears of happy joy in her voice when Alan and I told her that she was a great grandmother to our first grandchild, Caroline. And finally, the quintessential Luba moment, watching her without her knowing as she sat on the deck of our house with our dog Mingus, his head on her lap, his paw on her knee, as she sang, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when days are blue. You never know just how much I love you. Please don't take your sunshine away. Mom, we love you, and we will always remember you."
Hello, I'm Lois. I'm Luba's daughter-in-law. 16 years ago, I was very fortunate, to have had Luba embrace me into her family. She made me feel welcome right from the start. She's warm, witty, charming, beautiful. I felt that her innate elegance and intelligence made her seem both regal and down to earth. She's a joy to spend time with. I find that when people ask me to describe her, I'm drawn to share that she was declared a UNESCO World Treasure for her translating Yiddish stories into English. What an honor that was, and how rare. The award, of course, was not for her personally, it was for her group, and it was for the body of work. But for me, saying that she was declared a world treasure was shorthand for how I feel about her. That in my heart, she personally deserved, and will always deserve, to be revered as a world treasure.
I'm Alan, Luba's son-in-law. I came onto the scene about 12 years ago, and as I was thinking about what to say today, I wanted to go back to my initial impression and sort of experiences with Luba, and two things really stand out. So to give you some context, I grew up in a family that was not really into arts and culture that much, and I was, and that's something that I developed with my friends outside of my family. And then to be able to have that experience and talk about music and good films and theater and culture with Luba is something that I really treasured. It was a very different experience for me from the one I'd grown up with, so I really treasured that. And the other piece is really around the Yiddish. So my parents spoke Yiddish in the home. I understood everything that they said. I didn't speak very much at all, but had a few phrases. And I would say a few things to Luba, and she would correct me because I really did a bad job. And also sort of discovered that my parents spoke a certain dialect from whatever shtetl, and she spoke a more formal and proper thing. So I valued that, and two of my children actually studied Yiddish at university, and so one of the really beautiful moments I remember is that when Luba was in Mississauga visiting us, and we had a big family thing, and being able to hear my kids speaking Yiddish with her was very special.
Hello, I'm Margot. I'm the oldest daughter, second in line of three. Before I go on, I just want to um, ask that if anybody out there is willing to help with the minyaning tonight through Thursday, please see me afterwards. I'd really appreciate that. Okay. So, my mother's name was Ahuva Bachmul Shoshana. A rose by any other name would smell as sweet, so said the poet, by which essence, the very being, the intangible yet lasting qualities of someone are recognized. My grandmother's name was Rose, which means Shoshana in Hebrew. The playwright also said, "All I have is my name. Don't take my name away from me." And that means how we are known outwardly to others, our good name, the good we have done, becomes our names. Names, if we look, can be a signifier of the people, both of their inward nature and the face they present to the world. As a Jew, and as with many other cultures, one has a secular name and another name in another language, in this case, a Hebrew name. Sometimes they are one of the same in translation, sometimes they complement the other, and sometimes they are quite different, or simply waiting for the connection to be made. My own name, the Hebrew one, is Malka, which translates as a queen. Some say, perhaps, haughty, cool, closed. My secular name is Margot, the diminutive of Marguerite, a pearl, something precious yet hidden. And so I shall explore the hidden. My parents' names were Luba and Ted. There does not seem to be much match to that. However, Luba in Russian means love, and Ted was the diminutive of Theodore, love of God. So both parents' names were about love. And love sounds like lev, or the heart. My mother's Hebrew name was Ahuva, a translation or variant of Ahava. And my father's was Tevye Pinchas. Tevye from the word meaning good, and its variant would be Tuvia. So my parents were Ahuva and Tuvia, well matched in both sound and meaning. My mother's parents and my mom and dad all died on the calendar within 6 weeks of each other, years apart. They died in the fall, from late in Elul, in the days leading up to Tishrei, the Jewish New Year, and on through the cusp of the month that leaves our time of happiness at the end of Tishrei and into Cheshvan. Just a week ago, we were celebrating Simchas Torah and the cycle of the year and life. We started the Torah from its beginning, having celebrated it with the recitation of its end, its very last letter, the Lamed, and then its very first letter, the Bet. Lamed, Bet, together means lev, or heart. love, ahava, coming from the heart, and goodness, tov, my Father's name. God having brought forth with creation of the world, Rashis. The heart, the middle, the center, in ancient times was the base of all thinking, the rational, not the emotional as we now attribute to it. So together, the heart is of the intellect and emotion, or when we think of God, the one of judgment, justice, and mercy or grace. Or when we think of parenting, the one who provides love at once conditional and unconditional. In the heart or near the center of our morning prayers, we have the didactic chiastic structure of the Hava Rabbah, Ahava, love. It appears at the very start, very end, and in its middle or the crux. God, as a parent, says, I will love you. In the middle, you will love me. And at the closing, I love you. And if further continued, in the Shema, it entreats, love me, show me, do this, and I will always care for you. As Jews, we are asked to laud, labor, love. Judaism is conditional. We are taught, as a parent teaches, how we move among others to be known not only by what we say, but more importantly, by what we do, our actions, our deeds, and the mitzvot. And both my parents exhibited deep geniality, generosity, and beauty, an open heart, an open home, and a table that was blessed. In Mom's last months, she kept returning to her loves, to her first and to her last. Her mother, Rose Shoshana, to her husband, Ted, my father, both of whom have offered her love, ahuva, fully and unconditionally throughout her life. She spoke of them with respect, admiration, and deep gratitude, and she shared with her own mother, being a woman of warmth, of wit, and of wisdom. My mother always kept her own mum near to her and dear to her. And she also kept and valued her mama Lashon, her Yiddish. She was honored to translate from the original story for the anthology by Jewish women writers arguing with the storm. The story was aptly called a love story, and at its center was a character, was Malkala, the diminutive of this, or the softer version, the private version of Malka, my name. My parents, love and goodness, knew me. They taught me and they expected of me. And now both have left me. And I am left, as in another story, the pearl of sorrow, the last which must not be wanting. For each of our dear ones who dies and leaves us, we have one more friend in heaven to long for. We gaze upwards to the stars, looking for perfection.
Just by way of introduction, you've heard so much about her love of Yiddish. The first one we're going to sing is about a little rabbi in a little room with a wooden stove. The room is hot. He's teaching, excuse me, he's teaching children the alphabet. And he says in the second verse, if you learn it well, I'll give you a reward. And then we'll close by repeating it. So we will together sing the refrain. I'll sing the second verse and then conclude with the refrain again. And then this young man on the floor is going to sing a second song. And I'd like you to introduce the second song before we sing it. So the first one, I'm sure you all know. And if you know it, please sing along. Auf den Pripyatchik brennt ab und in Stub ist es, sitzt der Revenue mit kleine Kinderlach, lernen alle, sitzt kleine Kinderlach, lernen alle Beis. Zugje Kinderlach, gedenksche Teiere, Chumetz Aleph Beis. Wer kann besser lernen, vielleicht Aleph Beis, der bekimt davon. Wer kann besser von euch lernen, Aleph Beis, der bekimt davon. Auf dem Pripyatchik brennt a Feuer und in Stieb ist heiß. Sitzt der Revenue mit kleinen Kinderlach, lernt Aleph Beis. Sitzt der Revenue mit kleinen Kinderlach. Thank you. Now, you notice that the first time we said Stub, the second time we said Stieb. That represented her version of Yiddish and my version of Yiddish. I was born in Romania. Her background was Latvia. I was told that when we were young, the Litvaks and Romanians didn't talk to each other, but we did. Please introduce the second song. Go ahead. Und if I may add, it is gewähn a emisse Yiddische neshuma. Couldn't be any better than that. So, in closing, may the immortal soul of Luba Cates, Ahuva, Bat Shmuel v'Shoshana, shine among the elegant lights in heaven. May her dignified qualities of her life find their way into our minds and our hearts and our souls, so that we may learn to think, feel, and behave in the highest possible level. If we can succeed in doing this, then we will have actually made it possible for Luba to respectfully live on in this world through our deeds and our achievements for all the future generations of her friends and her family. And to that, let us say, Amen. Now, everyone is invited afterwards, after we go to the cemetery, to Dessert Plus, 664 King Edward Street, for a gathering where we can share some more of our stories. And I would love to hear some more Yiddish singing. And I'm sure the proprietor of the other plots would love to hear it as well. So if you know it, please sing it. Now, Shiva, as you already heard, will begin tonight at 6 o'clock in the evenings. The davening will be at 6 o'clock at the Simcha Center. And will continue until Thursday evening at 6 o'clock. Mornings will be observed at the Shared Tzedek at 7:30 in the morning. Um, for those of you who are going to join us to the cemetery and you're going to drive a car following us, I would like to really strongly encourage you to make sure that you have your flashing lights on and follow us. But please, and I mean this, please, please, observe all traffic lights. We no longer get a free ride through a red light. So stop. The corner is Armstrong and Main, a left turn. It's across the street from Weskeldona Park. We will not start until the family lets us know that everybody is there. Um, the El Male Rachamim is a prayer that our sages call a phone call to the soul. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is that we actually name the person in the prayer. You'll hear it both in Hebrew and English. It's a memorial that is done when we go to visit a cemetery and visit a loved one. So the Al Male Rachamim, for those that can, we invite you to rise. If you can't, that's perfectly okay. El Male Rachamim, Shochein Bamrohim, Amatzehe Menucha, Nechona Tachat, Kanfe Hashkinah, במעלות קדושים ודחורים, כזוהר, הרי המזכירים את נשמת אהובה בת שמואל ושושנה, שהלכה לעולמו, בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה. אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתירך בצדק כנופך לעולמי, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, ותנוח בשלום על משכבם, ונאמר Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence. Among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Luba Cates, Ahuva Bat Shmuel Shoshana, who is gone to her eternal home. Merciful one, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. You may be seated. In a moment, I'm going to ask the pallbearers to take their place beside the coffin, and I'd like to ask the rest of you to form two lines through which we're going to honor her with our final goodbye. The coffin will be rolled to the end of the hall here and then taken down, lifted down to the hearse itself. I'd like to thank you all very much for coming. And again, please drive carefully on the way to the cemetery. Again, a reminder, it's on Armstrong and Main. Just a quick reminder, 664 King Edward Street, dessert plus. Everyone is invited afterwards. Thank you.